Route 13. They called it the Highway of Shadows, a black ribbon of asphalt winding through dense pine forests. Tonight, fog clung to the road like a ghostly shroud. The air, thick with moisture, crackled with an eerie energy. A chill wind whispered through the trees, a mournful symphony for lost souls. The moon, a pale sliver veiled by clouds, offered no solace. This was a night for secrets, for things lurking just beyond the reach of the headlights. This was a night for ghosts. John, a man weathered by miles and time, gripped the steering wheel of his rig. The road had become his second home, a place where he found solace and solitude. Each mile marker passed was a testament to his endurance and resilience. His knuckles, white as bone, betrayed his calm facade. The tension in his hands mirrored the tension in his mind, a constant battle between the need to keep going and the desire to rest. He'd been driving for hours, the monotony broken only by the occasional crackle of his CB radio. The voices on the other end were a lifeline, a reminder that he wasn't completely alone in the vast expanse of the night. Fatigue gnawed at the edges of his vision, making the road ahead swim and distort. The lines on the asphalt seemed to blur together, creating a hypnotic pattern that threatened to lull him into a dangerous sleep. He rubbed his eyes, trying to fight off the weariness. The coffee in his thermos had long gone cold, and the energy drinks he relied on were losing their effectiveness. John had seen his share of storms and bad roads, but there was something about Route 13 that set him on edge. The road seemed to have a life of its own, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. A prickling sensation on the back of his neck told him he wasn't alone. He glanced in his mirrors, half expecting to see another vehicle, but the road behind him was empty. The feeling of being watched was unnerving, a constant reminder that the night held its own secrets. He adjusted his rearview mirror, trying to shake off the unease. The empty road behind him offered no comfort, only a reminder of the isolation that came with his chosen profession. Turning up the volume on his CB radio, he hoped to drown out the unsettling thoughts. The static and distant voices were a welcome distraction, a connection to the world beyond the confines of his cab. The headlights of his truck cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. Each turn of the wheel brought him closer to his destination, but the journey seemed endless. With a determined expression, John focused on the road. He knew he had to keep going, no matter how tired or uneasy he felt. The cargo he carried was important, and he took pride in his role as a lifeline for those who depended on him. As the truck drove into the distance, fading into the night, John steeled himself for the long haul ahead. The road was his companion, his challenge, and his solace. And so, he continued his lone journey, 1 mile at a time. A flicker of movement in the distance caught John's eye. A figure, tall and slender, stood by the roadside. A woman. Her white dress, nearly translucent in the swirling fog, seemed to glow with an ethereal light. She raised a hand, her gesture a plea for help. John slowed his truck, his heart pounding in his chest. He'd heard the stories, the whispers of a phantom hitchhiker on Route 13. He dismissed them as folklore, the ramblings of tired travelers. But now, staring into the woman's sorrowful eyes, he wasn't so sure. As John pulled up alongside her, the woman vanished. Just like that. Gone. He slammed on the brakes, his rig skidding slightly on the damp asphalt. Had he imagined it? His mind, weary from the long drive, must be playing tricks on him. He tried to shake off the unease that clung to him like a second skin. Just then, a soft voice, barely audible above the hum of his engine, drifted from the passenger seat. "Help me," it whispered. "Please help me." John pulled into the first truck stop he could find. The neon lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the parking lot. The place was almost deserted, save for a few trucks parked haphazardly. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and the distant hum of engines. He needed coffee, something strong enough to burn away the lingering fear. The events of the night had left him shaken, and he needed answers. The warmth of the cup in his hands was a small comfort, but it did little to ease the turmoil in his mind. He found the local sheriff, a grizzled man named Grady, nursing a cup of coffee at the counter. Grady's face was lined with years of experience, his eyes sharp and observant. He looked like a man who had seen it all, yet still carried the weight of each story. John sat across from Sheriff Grady in a brightly lit diner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the checkered floor. The smell of frying bacon and stale coffee filled the air, a stark contrast to the cold, dark night outside. The diner was a stark contrast to the darkness of the highway. Inside it was warm and bright, a small oasis of normalcy in the midst of chaos. Outside the highway stretched into the night, a ribbon of uncertainty and fear. Grady listened intently, his face a mask of concern. His eyes never left John's, and he nodded occasionally, encouraging him to continue. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that something significant was unfolding. John recounted his experience, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to remain calm. He spoke of shadows that moved on their own, of whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. His hands shook as he described the feeling of being watched, of an unseen presence that seemed to follow him. Grady listened patiently, his gaze steady. He didn't interrupt, allowing John to get everything out. There was a quiet strength in his demeanor, a sense that he was taking everything in and weighing it carefully. John could tell the sheriff didn't entirely believe him, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, perhaps a sliver of doubt. Maybe it was the way John spoke, or the details that seemed too vivid to be fabricated. Whatever it was, it gave John a glimmer of hope that he might not be alone in this. Grady leaned back in his seat, deep in thought. He rubbed his chin, the stubble making a faint scratching sound. "I've heard stories," he finally said, his voice low and measured. "Not like this, but strange things. Things that don't make sense." John's heart lifted slightly. It wasn't much, but it was something. He wasn't crazy, or at least not alone in his craziness. There was a chance, however slim, that he might find the answers he was looking for. Grady stood up, placing his hat back on his head. "Let's take a drive," he said. "Show me where it happened." John nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The night was far from over, but at least now he had someone by his side. Route 13, Grady sighed, running a hand over his tired face. Always something strange happening out there. Folks talk about the lost bride, a young woman who died on her wedding day. They say her spirit wanders the highway, searching for her lost love. He pulled out an old, leather-bound book, its pages filled with handwritten accounts of strange occurrences on the highway. "There's never been any proof," he said, his voice low, "but the stories persist. Maybe there's some truth to them, maybe not." That night, John and Grady drove out to the spot where John had seen the woman. The fog had lifted, revealing a star-strewn sky. The air, however, remained heavy with a palpable sense of dread. As they stood on the side of the road, John felt a cold spot form around him. And then he saw her. The woman in white stood on the side of the road, her face pale and drawn. Her eyes, filled with a deep sadness, met John's. This time, John knew he wasn't imagining it. This was real. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice thin and reedy. "I just want to go home." She told them her tale, a tragic story of love lost on a foggy night just like this one. Her fiancé, on his way to meet her at the altar, had been killed in a car accident on this very stretch of road. She had died of a broken heart, her spirit tethered to the place where she had last seen her beloved. She had been searching for him ever since, unable to find peace. John and Grady listened intently, their hearts heavy with sympathy. The weight of the woman's sorrow hung in the air, palpable and thick. They had heard many stories on their travels, but this one was different. It was as if the very essence of her pain had seeped into the asphalt beneath their feet. When she finished her story, Grady spoke, his voice gentle but firm. He had a way with words, a calming presence that could soothe even the most troubled souls. His eyes, reflecting the dim light, held a depth of understanding that went beyond mere empathy. "You need to let go," he said, his tone unwavering. Holding on to the past will only chain you to your sorrow. It's time to release the pain and embrace the love that awaits you. Your love is waiting for you on the other side, he continued, his voice a beacon of hope in the darkness. The light around them seemed to grow warmer, more inviting, as if echoing his words. He told her to follow the light, to find peace in the embrace of her lost love. It's not the end, he assured her, but a new beginning, a chance to be reunited with those you've lost. Slowly, the woman began to glow. Her form, once shrouded in sorrow, now radiated a gentle light. It was as if the very essence of her being was transforming, shedding the weight of her earthly troubles. Her form, ethereal and translucent, shimmered in the moonlight. The transformation was mesmerizing, a dance of light and shadow that spoke of liberation and peace. She smiled at them, a look of profound peace settling upon her face. It was a smile that spoke of acceptance, of understanding, and of a deep, abiding love that transcended the physical world. And then, with a soft sigh, she vanished, her spirit finally free. The air around them seemed to lighten, as if the very atmosphere had been cleansed of its sorrow. The highway, for the first time that night, felt still. The restless energy that had pervaded the air was gone, replaced by a serene calm, silent, at peace. The road stretched out before them, a ribbon of asphalt under the night sky, promising new journeys and new stories. John and Grady stood there for a moment longer, absorbing the tranquility, before continuing on their way, forever changed by the encounter.